Greetings. Hope you're doing well. You are free to the Mad Poet Podcast. I am your host, Alex Murder, the Mad Poet. Hope you're doing well. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Good to be back. Feeling good, man. Feeling good. And yeah, just wanted to share where my mind's at.
Recording in progress.
Just wanted to share where my mind's at. Just making sure I record just in case. You never know these days. Things just go disarray at pins drop. So but I am here. I'm your host, Alex Murdoch. This is Mad Poet Podcast. And normally, of course, I would do my best to stream earlier during the week, but been somewhat of a hectic week, but as you know, needs must. So we do our best to get things done. And I've been looking forward to this. But I hope everybody's doing well and having a good week. It's the last day of the week, so I would assume everybody's trying to rest, trying to chill, trying to somewhat prep for days ahead, etc. All of that malarkey. Here in the UK right now, freezing. Everybody's like misery, proud to be grumpy and all that malarkey. I would assume it's the same for the US and most parts of Europe.
It's 16 hours.
There goes my laptop again, trying to speak for me and all kind of stuff. Like, stop it all, yeah, as we say over here in the UK. But yes, indeed. Now, I suppose it's time to give you a piece of my mind. Where am I going with this? Just give me a second. Let me start with this. It's a piece I've been working. Funny enough, this is something I was actually working on today, and I thought it was appropriate to share and speak about. But first, let me share this quote with you, and then tell you where my mind is at. It says, "Daring the amazement to embrace me. Without my mistakes, I may not have the sight to see. Thus the journey was one I had to embrace fully. Despite seldom gritted teeth, starstruck for the hills and mountains could threaten to have one on their knees, threaten to go wounds and ulcers on the chest if I dare retreat. But on second thoughts, perhaps that was me." Yes, and always, as always, this one came from deep. I wasn't trying to rhyme there. It wasn't. It just sort of fit. But yes, that one came from deep. And there's a few things that somewhat inspired this, you could say. But let me start where, let me start from the top. In my earlier endeavors of creating, I think about these times a lot, especially today after, writing this piece. It brings back memories. And I remember hesitating during these times, during these process of, you know, um, putting pen to paper and just, you know, pouring out what's there, sort of thing. I remember a lot of those memories now, and it makes me think, why was it sometimes it could be like pulling teeth, or sometimes it would be a sense of procrastination, not wanting to somewhat begin the process to initiate, so to speak. And my only answer at this point, my only answer is it takes it takes will to be vulnerable. It takes will to be vulnerable, meaning it takes a lot to be vulnerable, but it starts with will. But overall, it takes a lot. The part of the culture that I am, meaning part of who I am and what I've embraced is the way I refer to it is the only way is through, right? Now, obviously, I think there's quite a few people like that, but I don't think it's a common thing because more people are more prone to run away from their issues as opposed to run. And even in this sense, as we're saying, as we're talking about this, yes, I'm used to doing that, but even I have certain days where I would still do it because I'm disciplined, but I still hesitate to initiate. And this is where I'm speaking about. And I think sometimes it's so prominent in certain people that sometimes you possibly might want to disregard or discard the whole process altogether. Meaning, you know, let me not do this today. Let me do this tomorrow. Let me do this next week. Let me do this next month. Let me do this next year. And I think that's somewhat the driving inspiration that somewhat took me to this today. But as I was saying, you know, I for the most part I practice um, embracing the idea that the only way is through. That's pretty much part of my culture, being who I am, sort of thing. You know, most days. That means the only way is to figure it out. I have to. I have to figure it out. I have to. I have to. And don't get me wrong. Like to say the only way is through it is somewhat extreme way to to say it. But I am a mad poet. But perhaps a constructive way is to confront yourself. Somewhat more relative term, to confront yourself, to understand, to adapt, you know, so you could overcome, in a sense. Reiterating, well, let's put it like this. Let's put it like this. That's the army's. I suppose you could say their slogan. to adapt, to adapt, overcome. But in this sense, yeah, to understand to begin with, to and then to adapt and then to overcome, in a sense. Um, it's a very intriguing thing to think about for me personally. I'm not sure about anybody else. Perhaps you might relate to what I'm speaking about, um, or somewhat drawn to the contextual um, clarity that I'm trying to explain. Um, I was at I went to a book launch, to go further into this. I was at a poetry book launch recently, meaning during the week. During the week, I was at this book launch, and it pretty much had me thinking a lot when I left. And the reason why is the author said that um, she during the process of creating her book, halfway through, she quit writing, quit writing, and it just had me thinking. I'm just like, whoa, that's very deep to begin with. Of course, I mean, you literally just admitted to quitting, you know, in the midst. Now, of course, we're here now with the book, so of course you didn't quit, but I think it speaks to, you know, the depth at which you have to draw to be profound to begin with, to express, to really tell your story to heights, um, to a certain feat that is is nothing to it's not nothing short of an accomplishment. You know, I think that is that's at least I gathered that from what she was saying. You know, it also made me realize how massive a feat it is that us poets, if not writers in general, embrace every day. To create at will, day in, day out. Because if you're saying you're this creator, if you're saying you're a writer or just creator, if not a writer, just a creator, pretty much your job is to create all the time. And so, for the most part, most days, that's what you do. And ultimately, you know, I think in the early infancy of creating, and that's why you have to think about the your creating age of such like that. It's sort of like training age to me at this point, where how old are you? I remember, I think it was Godfrey the comedian, and he mentioned something about um, his comedy age in his age in comedy, sort of thing. And it's pretty much the same thing. I see there's a commonality across the board. You have comedy age, and may I add as well, I have an affinity to comedy. And when I say Godfrey the comedian, I'm speaking about the American comedian Godfrey. Salute to him. I've always respected, his um, point of thought, his expression, always being himself. I think that's the biggest thing for me. You have to be yourself when it comes to creating. Um, but ultimately, what I'm trying to express is that we have this thing where like age is very relevant when it comes to a creator, and I've always I've always also had an affinity to old creators because what I find, especially writers, writing is somewhat like it ages. It's supposed to age like wine, as at least the way I understand it or the way I experience it. Because as you mature, as you grow older, as you get older, as you're, and I'm not speaking about in general, I'm speaking about your age as within that creative sphere that you create for yourself. I think as you grow and you mature, your writing pretty much just um it's like you're writing, it starts out as a baby and it just keeps growing. It just keeps growing. It just keeps growing. And this is where I'm at with it, and so to speak to the point, that's where I'm sort of kind of reiterating about the age, the vintageness, the maturity that comes with being a creator, if not a writer, or even more so a poet. But to home in on what the point I'm trying to make is there's a burden here. I think there's a burden here. And I think us, because somewhat we do it all the time, we embrace it to the point where it becomes secondary, that we somewhat overlook the feat of what we do. And I think it's extraordinary to think about, it's extraordinary to think about. I just had an epiphany. Um, I want to just home in on this quickly. Pardon me. But I really wanted to. Just give me a sec. I'm just going live. I'm going live. Thought I'll add my TikTok to this as well. To home in, on the specifically for poets. I think what's overlooked is the weight of vulnerability. Vulnerability. This is day out. Homing in on poets to begin with. I think being vulnerable is something that we have to weigh in, day out. And to that point, I think sometimes we take that feat for granted. You know, for this, by the way, but perhaps so much more exacerbated if you're a poet. And the reason why that is because when it comes to poets, you have to remember you're actually, well, let me speak about the stories first. Storytellers go through this, of course, but less so because I think I think it's easier to hide facets of your being between lines if you're a storyteller. You know, people, unless you actually like elaborate on it, I don't think people somewhat understand fully exactly, you know, the power, the how big it is to be vulnerable in that space to organize so much chaos where you can create a novel or a short story or a novella or things in that order. But I think it's somewhat further for a poet because you know it's very, you have to stand on it. And when I say stand on it, you have to just, you have to embrace it. Um, these are certain checkpoints or rites of passage that I think, well, me being a Christian, I went through myself to understand that these are things that I have to honor myself, the ability to be vulnerable. That's something that I think you have to you have to go through, you have to process, you have to understand, and you have to know that you know people want to see the real you, sort of thing. But the reason why I think it's so much further for a poet because if you're supposed to perform your work, aren't you? Well, if you're somebody that performs, I think that's where the rabbit hole goes deeper for a performer to perform your work. The level of vulnerability that comes with that, if you're not ready for it, I think that's where things becomes somewhat more of a challenge to say, I can maintain, I can do this day in, day out. You know, I think that that's where the issue is. So, in essence, I guess what I'm saying is there's a certain weight that you have to carry when it comes to being a creative, when it comes to, because of the level of vulnerability when it comes to that comes with creating. Because if you're creating, there's a responsibility to be sincere, to be real where you're coming from, whether you're a storyteller, whether you're a poet, regardless, even if you're a non-fiction writer, I think you have to come from, well, but let's put it like this: you're giving people, you're providing a service, if nothing else, where you're giving people something that you want them to relate to, but you want them to also feed off. And nobody want to give people garbage to eat, right? It's nutrition, isn't it? Nutrition for the mind. So in essence, you want this to be something that people, something to make people better. And I think that's where this came in. And but I just want to reiterate, yes. So this was all inspired partly by the book launch, and you know the author mentioned that she quit writing her book halfway through, and you know that really had me thinking. You know, a thing that if you don't explain, The power to release. These are all things. The power to release. I'm just gonna list them. Things that comes with, vulnerability, being a creator. The power to release, the power to achieve, the different sides of yourself along the way. But, you know, I suppose what I'm saying is I see it as a double-headed sword. You create, you get these vibes, you put on for your people, you put on for yourself, you make these great gestures, magnanimous creations, etc., etc. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, like, it's a blessing, of course, of course. I mean, why would you do it if you don't love it, right? But I'm merely just speaking about, merely just explaining some of the, you could argue, drawbacks or byproduct of the issue. And because this really had me thinking, because I was thinking to myself, and to be so brave to put that out there, where you quit writing your book halfway through, I was just like, man, you know, that's deep. But of course, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized she quit writing because of the need to be vulnerable. In my theory, in my opinion, I think she quit because there's a there's a need to be vulnerable. There's a need to be vulnerable when you throughout this writing process that we go through, especially you're speaking about not just writing surface depth type of thing. If you're thinking about creating something deep, something that people can really draw from, regardless of your walk of life, I think there's a need to be vulnerable there. And if you can't, you think you're doing a disservice. It's sort of like an unjust um, process if you're not doing this correctly, being sincere, being vulnerable, so you can be on the ball with where you're taking this process, where you're taking this creation. And so after a while, I sort of understood what was happening, where she went from, where she went to with it. But at the same time, I thought to myself, and at the same time, I thought to myself, at this stage, I would have. I'm pretty much surprised that she hadn't somewhat gone through that process of and made peace with that part part of herself that would feel like that, in a sense where, you know what, I'm all right being vulnerable. I'm all right just being open, so I can, and this is my lifestyle. This is what I do. This is something I will do for the rest of my life. You know, it really had me thinking. But maybe, and I just want to add this into it. Maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe it's a situation where, maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe it's a situation where, to be sincere, to be vulnerable, to be open, to be real, to be honest. Perhaps this is something perhaps this is a decision or a dedication, um, that you have to get up and make. You can't just, perhaps it's a thing where you can't just do it one day. You have to do it every day. Perhaps perhaps this is what we all go through as creators, as I would say all creators, because you know there is a process going on, and of course, when you're a beginner, and I always compare it to the I try to compare it to the training age, where when your training age is young, it's everything is easy, but when your training age is 10 years, 20 years, and you're no longer scratching the surface where everything's easy, that's when you really know who you really are, right? Because you have no choice but to dig deep, especially when people know you to be that person where your writing have been speaking for itself for such a long time. What are you going to do now? You can't give them, you can't cheapen your pen, so to speak. You have to live this, the real. You have to somewhat represent your brand, if you get what I mean. So what are you going to do now? And so that's why I compare it to the training age. You're not going to start at, you're going to start at 50 kg and then say, 10 years down the line, I'm going to start pushing 10 kg. It doesn't work like that. So I guess why I'm trying to make that comparison to the training age. And so sometimes, I think certain people get up, including myself. You get up one day and you don't feel to be vulnerable today, to create, to express. Not to say that you don't want to, but like I said, you know, I think any creator would argue that when you create, you're giving a piece of yourself. When you write, you're giving a piece of yourself. So if you're not willing to give willingly that piece of yourself willingly, then you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. If you're not willing to give willingly, you shouldn't write that piece. You shouldn't write that novel. You shouldn't write that novella. You have to want to do this for the right reasons, including for yourself to begin with, before you want to do it for somebody else. You want to give to somebody else. I think that's where I'm going with this, you know. So yes, there are perks of this whole thing that we call, that we us creators call ourselves, and stamp ourselves as being the power to release, you know, the power to express, speak these lines, and man, how many people, uh, we've seen what rap's done over the years. We've seen just the power of wordplay, so many different things. Um, the power to achieve, you know, how many people have we seen won awards, including comedians? As you know, I have an affinity for comedians as well, because I also see their writing as just great. Like when they're great on stage, etc., etc. I think it's just an example of great writing, just great writing, just great pension. But and they can't go to school for it either. It's just they have to learn on the ball, and so they do. So you have to go on stage and work this stuff out. That's why they always start with booze. Most For the most part, most comedians, you're getting booed on stage first or second time, because some people get lucky the first time, and then for on and off you get booze here and there, because you have to work this thing out. You have to learn how to project, how to understand crowd presence, crowd control, etc. Yes, and I think those are like ways you're sharpening your swords. That's a process in itself. But in terms of the penship, I think that's the most important part. And that's something that it takes time and it takes growth. So I think that's why, a lot of comedians, like you might have some that are actors and they're great. They're great with, just putting on for their work. But laws of the jungle, so to speak, dictates that you have to give your pen time to grow. Because only that's the only way to be great, only way to give yourself longevity, um, only way to be consistent and to show your greatness by having great penmanship, having great penmanship. So I don't know, it's just a process. And then there's the ability to show different sides of yourself along the way. I think that also takes a level of vulnerability that I think a lot of people underestimate, what creators go through. And respect, my bro, respect. I appreciate you, man. Um, now I'm really just this I'm really just trying to break down the process and of a creative lifestyle or writing lifestyle in general. And if you haven't heard, it really just speaking on. I went to this book launch and it was a poet that was speaking, and she was basically saying that she quit writing halfway through her work. She quit writing halfway through her work, and it really had me thinking. You know, what would what would bring such a thing? What would make you want to quit writing? And this is somebody that's established as well. I don't really want to say the name, so that's why I'm just leaving the name. But it's just more the idea of it, the situation of it that I'm speaking on, and it just had me like, oof. And so I'm just sort of just breaking it down from my own viewpoint. What would make somebody um, quit what they do, their livelihood, something they've always wanted since they were small, and now they're living their dream. And I came to the conclusion that the only thing that would make somebody want to quit in that sense is the level of vulnerability that you have to draw from to put yourself out there like that. The realness that you really have to put on paper. And you have to remember that this is a level of exposure where it's just like, I suppose the only way to say it is like if you're walking out naked, that's pretty much what you do as a poet is the most extreme sense of it. Because like myself, where you go on stage and you perform, like you're really telling people who you are. And not everybody's gonna like you or like what you put out there. And so it's a very fine line. And if you're not ready for it, and that also, begs the question, what is she ready? Was she ready for it? Was she ready when she should have been ready for it, basically. That's where I'm at. So yes, as a creator, are you ready for what you will see? That's the other question. Are you ready for what you will see? And what I mean by that is the ability to dig deep, right? The ability to dig deep. As you know, it takes time, right? So now you're digging deep. And of course, you'll get the perks are you know yourself so much better. But now you know yourself so much better, you also see the sides that you don't want to see. You see the sides that you don't, perhaps the sides that you have nightmares about, perhaps the sides that you don't ever like to look at. The sides that make you want to turn away when you look in that mirror, reflecting on yourself. And that's another reason why somebody would not want to speak on what they see or be sincere about who they are or just talk about, what's inside, you know, because of course we're all good, but we also all have darkness inside us. We also have a little bit of a monster inside us. And man, it just goes to the reason. That's the reason that if you're not ready for if you're not ready to see all these different facets, different sides of you, whew, you know, um, yeah, it can be a double-headed sword. Are you ready to scratch beyond the surface? And I think this question especially is one question that you sort of have to ask yourself at some point in the earlier stage. You have to ask yourself, am I ready for what this is going to bring? Am I ready for what I'm going to see? Am I ready for what will come with everything I'm about to do, everything I'm about to express to the world? As I said, sometimes you do experience flare ups where people don't like to hear what you have to say, what you want to say. You might not like what you have to say, and that's the other side of the coin. If you're going to be objective about this, you might not like what you have to say, but it's still your responsibility to say it. I think a lot of people have issues with that. Because to an extent, we all want to please individuals, please people. But if you do that, that just makes you another statistic, another person out there trying to be the same as everybody else. So what have you really done? You know? So I don't know, it just really had me thinking, really had me thinking. So but yes indeed. So in essence, I'm just speaking about the vulnerability that comes with expression, creating, writing, storytellers, poets, comedians, you know, actors, actors. Because let's be real, I suppose they're more of a mannequin type of um, way of looking at it. But at the same time, what are you drawing from to project some of these dark scenes that we see on TV? So I don't know. It just really had me thinking. Really had me thinking. But that's pretty much what I really had to express today. But to wrap things up, to wrap things up, I want to just share. I would like to share my little beauty. I haven't really and this is I haven't really promoted myself much recently since I've been out. So this is my most recent publishing, Leo Poetry Event, and man, it's been exciting putting this book out. It's been great having this. I'm very proud of this. You know, being all right with this is Poetry Event Ramblings of a Madman. And it pretty much just fits into where I'm going with this. You have to be all right with seeing the dark as well as the light and find balance. Because only then can you truly have longevity. Can you truly do this that we do for a long period? You know, so many different things. So there's a lot to this. There's a lot to this. So I just wanted to share that quickly. And you can find that on Amazon. I haven't really promoted myself much recently, not online. So I just wanted to just share that. But that's pretty much a wrap for me. But as and I just decided last minute to stream on TikTok. Hence why I'm sort of interacting with a few people. Yes, I am. Yes, that was uh, that was a book. My most recent book. Yeah, this is called Poetry Event Ramblings of a Madman. My most recent one. I have quite a few books out there, but this one I had a book launch for it as well in the summer. So it's not been out for long. Yes, with a three, yeah. And man, it's been great putting this book out. Been so proud of it, and where where I had to go, how deep I had to dig to really embrace what I created. Um, man, it's been a blessing though. It's been a blessing, and I've had a chance. I've read some of it. I've read some of it while I've performed certain places, and just different things like that. Just keep putting it out there, and it's still new. It's been out pretty much uh, August. The book launch was the 10th of August, and it went well. I even had friends of mine, good friends of mine, came and performed at the venue, and they really embraced it, man. And I thank them for taking their time to support what I do. So it's been a blessing, you know. But right now, I'm just uh, between projects. I just have few other things I'm doing in the back. But for the most part, as far as this going right now, it's just sharing it with to the masses and a few pieces I have in my head that I perform. So man, it's been positive. It's been great. But I think that's a wrap, and just gonna wrap things up for the night, or for the evening, for the afternoon. wherever you are, depending on where you are. And this is Mad Poet Podcast. Um, Time to chiming out. Deep friends from the people. Um, I would say more solitary, but it's inspired by different things. I'm very aware of my surrounding, also mental health, the experiences, the human experience relating to the mind, and a lot of things that we go through in our heads, and I speak a lot about what I understand people go through as well, not just for myself. And I try to write in a way where people can put themselves in my shoes, not just speaking direct, for myself only. I speak a lot for what people go through. So it's not just about me when I create. So I create in a way. I like to create in a way where I speak for other people as well as myself, because I understand that we all go through. Yes, we are different, but we go through a lot of similar experiences. Go through a lot of similar experiences. So I think that's one of the responsibilities of being a creator, such as myself. So absolutely, absolutely. Um, is it more deep dive into your internal world where others might not be able to reach? No, no. I think there are. Don't get me wrong. There are certain pieces that are very abstract, meaning, but not to say that you can't understand. It just means that I'm speaking. I've created this sort of like a certain premise or a certain ideal or idea, and you have to sort of follow me down the rabbit hole, so to speak, to really get where I'm coming from. But not to say that you can't understand. There's nothing too abstract where you don't get where I'm coming from, because especially when you talk about things that we experience as people, I think to an extent we all go through something, if just once or twice. Um, you know, we can all relate to a certain degree, and so I think it's my job as a creator to always um, write in a way that people can actually relate or understand what I'm speaking about. But also, I represent myself, and so I my stage name is the Mad Poet. My real name is Alex Murdoch, and so they're both on the book. But my author name overall is Alex Murdoch, my real name, because I write stories as well. So it's not just poetry, crime thrillers. So in fact, that's something I'm working on for now, but that's for next year or the year to come. So yeah, it's just different things, but definitely write for other people as well as myself, as well as myself. But I think that's a wrap, and I'm about to call it. But thanks so much for listening. I'll most likely be back during the week. I have been quite busy, so I haven't really been able to do lives. But normally I will be doing lives like every week. So I'm looking forward to starting that again. Um, that too, that too, definitely that too. Says capturing shining light or rare significant experiences. Yes, definitely that too. Um, Thanks so much. Take care.